Hi, friends. Thanks for joining us. My name is Dan Lapel for New Focus Recordings. I'm joined by Felix Reyes of the Pathos Trio. Put out a really cool record last week. Hey, Felix, how's it going?
It's going great.
Great. Thanks for hopping on Zoom.
hmm
So the Pathos Trio is yourself. Let's see if I get this right. Marcelina Suholska,
hmm
and you're both percussionists, and Alan Hankers on piano. And
Exactly.
you guys have been doing a lot of great commissioning work over the last few years, culminating in this release, When Dark Sounds Collide. Why don't you maybe give us a little backstory about the group itself, when it formed, and sort of the development of this particular commissioning project?
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of when Pathos formed, we formed basically towards the end of 2018, and initially the group was actually a duo between myself and Marcelina, um, and basically what had happened was that uh, we were basically a duo, and then as we were kind of actually thinking of composers to commission early on, we were thinking of a couple of people in mind, and that's sort of how Alan kind of came into the mix, where he was actually our first composer, which we were going to commission. And so we reached out to him, and then as he was writing his duo piece for me and Marcelina, he quickly kind of came up with the idea of adding piano into the mix of the piece, and then slowly but surely we sort of we started to collaborate, and then we quickly realized how we all had natural chemistry with one another, and then sort of from there kind of we permanently made the group a trio, and that first piece ended up being Distance Between Places, which is on the album, and it's our very first piece that Alan wrote for the group.
Cool. What geographically, where were you guys when you connected?
So I had at that time, I was still pretty fresh, living out in Brooklyn, because I had finished grad school the year prior. So I was basically in Brooklyn in the New York City scene for like about a year. Marcelina was finishing up her master's at that time, at MSM, and had just started her percussion fellowship at the New World Symphony, and then Alan was in the process of finishing up his PhD at Stony Brook. I think it was in the second year in
Cool.
2018. Yeah.
So, is there a Manhattan School of Music connection and a Stony Brook connection?
Uh, Not per se, but I mean, with the trio, that was something that kind of just unexpectedly became a underlying, I guess, common thread between the three of us, is that we all kind of came from really strong contemporary music programs. So
Yeah.
Alan coming from Stony Brook, Marcelina from MSM, and then I, you know, finished my graduate studies at Bowling Green State University.
Oh, great.
So so
Cool.
it's kind of this like trifecta of like contemporary music backgrounds we all come from.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, I had a connection many years back with Bowling Green too. I taught part time there for a couple of years a while
Okay.
back. It's a great school, and a lot of great folks there, as well as the other places you mentioned, of course.
Yeah.
Um, cool. And I know that, I mean, the sort of underlying theme of the record is that a lot of the composers that you worked with have sort of, well, I don't know if I quite want to say double lives, but they have strong interests in other sort of corners of the genre world, and they bring those into their compositions, and generally, but specifically, I think for a lot of the rep on this album. Would you? I mean, do you feel like uh, this? That's not really like a hallmark of any generation per se. I feel like that's been true for a while, that composers
hmm
draw on. Uh, but do you sense any different flavor to it with younger composers? Is it more immersive? Is it sort of? I'm just curious, how that seems from your point of view.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, as far as like the composers that that are on our album, and that we tend to, gravitate towards and commission. So I mean, with the five composers on our album, so that being Evan Chapman, Alison Newton-Jung, Finola Marival, Alyssa Weinberg, and then our very own Alan Hankers, our pianist in the trio. Initially the idea for the album was, we wanted to kind of, compile our first set of commissions we've ever, put together as a trio and worked on with composers, thus being those five individuals, but then also really thinking more in a deeper level. One of the things we focus on with the commissions that we try to go for with composers is that, as a group, we're all really strongly interested in other, obviously, not non-classical, contemporary genres of music, that ranges anywhere from heavy metal music to like alternative rock, like electronic music, like minimalist music, and anything kind of in between. And so with these particular composers, even though some kind of, dabble in like, writing for various genres, and in others maybe not so much, but the common thread when we approached everybody in this project was that, we kind of laid the groundwork where we had conversations early on with each of these composers being like, hey, this is who we are as a group. These are the interests in genres of different music that we're personally into outside of, classical contemporary chamber music, and then kind of giving them that groundwork to then allow them to, express through their own voice, like creating their own piece of music that kind of reflects, the interest of the trio in that regard. And so there's like different various like levels of like, there's, for example, like with Evan's piece, A Fiction of Light, in the album, where he's really kind of dabbling between like electronic and minimalist music. And then there's with other composers, like with Alyssa Weinberg or Finola Marival, where it kind of falls more along the lines within what you consider like classical contemporary music, but there's more of like this undertone aesthetics of like darker sounds, some being heavy and some being kind of like ambient or like somber, and these are all kind of like aesthetics that sort of comprise the music that all three of us generally listen to, that you can kind of take away from from black metal and things like that. It doesn't, there's different degrees to what, like what defines like what dark and heavy music. Doesn't always mean like, something that's fast and like, heavy driven. It could be something that could be slow, or again, like somber, or, just something that could be more ominous and ambient.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned Evan Chapman's piece, which starts off the album. Maybe let's listen to a little bit of that and chat about it after we hear some music. So this is Evan Chapman's Fiction of Light. So I should mention, in addition to being a composer who's on the album, Evan Chapman is also really active as a video artist, right? 410 Media. Is he it's a team, right? 410.
Hmm.
So but he's sort of definitely one of the driving forces behind uh that crew, and they produce so much great content also for your guys' album. In fact, the whole project is sort of a collaboration with a lot of video footage from sessions, I imagine, and other types of things. So really cool. And in the notes, he talks a little bit about how that uh, sort of visual relationship to work manifests itself in this piece, in terms of light and color and instrumentation. How did that sort of strike you guys from the player's point of view? That component, that aspect of his piece.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, it was super interesting because when he wrote the piece, he gave us the music first, and then later on, as we were, once we had the final product of the music, and had pretty much finished learning the piece and was really putting it together, did he kind of then give us, the full description, like the program notes as far as like what the piece was about. And it was actually really it was really refreshing because again, without having that sort of context, we were able to really kind of come up with almost like our own definition of the piece. And it was a really special treat because like you mentioned, outside of his piece, but with all of the pieces on the album, we recorded all of them in tandem with his film company 410 Media, and not only recording the audio, but recording music videos for all of the pieces. And then in particular with Evan's piece, it was really nice when we recorded his music video because he really got to direct. I mean, he's always him and his partner Kevin Eichenberg. They both together run 410 Media. They're always obviously the visionaries when it comes to like coming up with the visual storytelling of like every video they put out. But in particular, because this was Evan's piece, he was really kind of directing the visuals for this. And and so like the music video for Fiction and Light was actually really special because he really experimented and played around with all sorts of different you know light lighting effects and just um different like camera angles, going from like a complete 360 rotating camera, like having someone on a dolly from like the first portion of the piece to like in the middle section, having like a complete overhead that was kind of oscillating 360 very slowly, and then up until like the last section of the piece where it kind of both of those ideas kind of come full like circle as a hybrid where there's an aerial view, but it's rotating 360 between the three players. So
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting sort of analogs between the the ideas of visual light and color, and how that might have manifests itself with timbre and instrumentation. So it was interesting to read that in the notes and think about how he sort of tackled that connection.
yeah,
Cool. Let's move on to another piece on the record. So we were going to listen to Allison's piece, right?
exactly, yeah.
Why don't you set that up a little bit, and then we'll play a bit of it for everybody.
Yeah. And so basically our connection with Allison Yunfeng Zhang kind of stemmed through Marcelina um in the group because they went to school together at Manhattan School of Music. And so uh early on when we were thinking of our first set of composers to want to collaborate and commission works from, uh Allison was the person that Marcelina recommended to the group. And so when she showed us her music, we were immediately drawn by like her distinct compositional language. And so we, it made sense for us to be able to reach out to her. And so with her piece, prayer variations, uh the whole idea of the piece, it really revolves around um imagining the piece being performed in a cathedral space, because a lot so in its simple form, it's a I guess what you call it, like a theme and variations, the structure of the piece. But she was really inspired by, at the time when she was writing it, she was visiting Europe a lot, and she was going, particularly in Germany, and she was always going to lots of different concerts in different cathedral spaces, and kind of being inspired by like the not usually the the open warm acoustics that you tend to typically hear in a cathedral or church space. That'll kind of, and hearing like chimes in some of these concerts that she was going to during that time, that kind of set the stage for the inspiration for the piece. So there's little elements of that throughout, with like the vibraphone that kind of like carries over the basic melody that then transforms throughout the piece. And so yeah, and it's really just, I would say, like a sonic experience, as far as like how you're hearing the melody and kind of how it morphs, and then it gets lost and transition between all of the non-pitched like rhythmic stuff that kind of then overlaps the melody, and purposely like uh clouds where the melody is, and then you're able to hear it like towards the end. And it's, yeah, and it builds throughout, and then there's times where it gets really fast, but it's a really exciting piece that I think she really was able to capture a lot of, I guess, some of the aesthetics that we really like, particularly with like black metal music. Like I mentioned before, it's not, having something sound dark doesn't always necessarily need to be, something that's fast, or uh very, very like self-driven. It could be something that's slow, um and ambiguous, and then it builds up into something even more.
Yeah, I felt that there's also some sort of ambient elements in this piece, which makes sense since she's really trying to get inside the sort of experience of being in a such a unique kind of space like a cathedral.
Yeah.
Let's listen to an excerpt from this piece, Prayer Variations by Alison Yunfei Jiang. Great. And so the last piece we were going to check out in our chat today is the piece you mentioned before that sort of formed the group in the first place. Your pianist Alan Hanker's "Distance Between Places,"
Mhm.
and I enjoyed this piece a lot. I found the sort of sort of verticality and the angular piano chords. There's something very expansive about it that I and you guys are really dialed in. It's clear you've played it a lot, and it's sort of it feels like you're sort of one organism working together, which is great. Do you want to add anything about this before we take a listen?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, you mentioned that this was our very first piece, that Alan wrote for the group. So yeah, I mean, we've been playing this piece for a while, and I think it also kind of what you're describing, how, like, how tight knit the writing is. I think it's definitely also just a testament to Alan's compositional style. You know, there's he Alan kind of has this, I would say, in his music, these two very um like extreme ranges in his writing, where you know he really likes um like like spectral and like spatial like music at times, and then on the other end, like he has in his writing like a really solid and like queer language for writing like really tight knit, um rhythmically complex, you know, things in his music. And then with Distance Between Places, it kind of has a combination of both those things. You know, it has a really nice arc from the beginning and the end, kind of being more rhythmically driven, but like at the beginning, you know, it is still kind of spatial, and then it builds up into like this like faster like rhythmic groove section. Then the middle section kind of evens things out with, you know, there's more of like a free open form, um and in the music, it's written out like almost as graphic notation. It's like very spectral, with a clear direction though. um and yeah, and I think, um yeah, it's just a testament to Alan's writing. And again, he really kind of understands where me and Marcelina are coming from in terms of like initially what we wanted from the piece as a duo. And I think at the time he was really kind of exploring, just the idea of like individual music streams that are kind of like independent from each other, from like, you know, in terms of like the rhythm, timbre, and then having like each player basically doing independent things. And then there'll be times again, like when you get to the rhythmic sections, where everyone kind of lines up. And even then there's, you know, there's metric modulations going on that you probably don't, you're not going to be able to like really pick up on with just listening to it. But if you were reading the music, it's we're all doing very different things. So
Yeah, he mentioned that in the program note that he was sort of inspired by a city soundscape in a way, a lot of different activity that's sort of uh, concurrent but independent. I think
yeah.
that's a nice way of sort of understanding what's going on. Let's listen to a bit of Alan Hanker's uh, "Distance Between Places." Great. Well, it was cool to get a snapshot of this album, which has a certain amount of contrast in it, and I'm sure it'll be interesting to see, you know, where you guys go next with your commissioning projects. And so, thanks again for spending some time and talking about this music. Let's make sure to shout out some key people involved in the production of this album. All the tracks were recorded, edited, and produced, mixed and mastered by 410 Media. Of course, Evan Chapman also composed the first track on the album. Art direction and design by Michael Kopansky, and three different recording locations here: Rittenhouse Soundwork in Philadelphia, Mise en Place in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and Riverside Church in Morningside Heights in Manhattan. And do you want to just mention some key organizations who helped you guys put together the funds to make this happen?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so first and foremost, we definitely want to, Pathos definitely wants to, thank New Music USA because they were initially the first organization that gave us a Winter Project grant that helped kind of kickstart um, the project itself to put together his album. Want to thank Vic Firth, because they've over time have given some sponsoring funds for this, the Foundation for Contemporary Arts, um, and then definitely funds that we've used from our Ensemble Forward grant through Chamber Music America had also, and then just the coaching experiences that we had through that opportunity with Eric Chopich. He helped us kind of, really fine tune some of the each of the pieces before we recorded them. So we definitely want to thank, all these organizations, because without them, and also special mention to Sandbox Percussion, because I work for them as studio manager. And so, whenever we would rehearse or need to, borrow gear and percussion equipment for these recordings, we were able to, all of that was mostly, we were able to get through Sandbox because of my affiliation and work with them as their studio manager. So,
Great.
they're also a huge part in making this album happen. So we couldn't have done it without any of them.
Nice. Well, it takes a team, which it's nice to see.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Felix. Everybody out in internet land, you can find this album on our site, on Bandcamp, on all the streaming services. It's Panoramic 24, Pathos Trio, When Dark Sounds Collide, new music for percussion and piano, and really great chance to check out some younger composers and a wonderful active new trio commissioning music for what I think is not a super common instrumentation, right? Usually it's two piano, two percussion.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, that was from the get-go when we formed the trio. We kind of told ourselves like, yeah, there's music for two piano, two percussion, or piano and percussion, but there's like little to none for two
Yeah.
percussion and piano. So
Well,
that
interesting.
was also
Yeah.
like our initial initiative to, like, if we're going to be a group, we're just going to commission all of our music.
Yeah, it's interesting how that sort of resulted. So often these things grow out of iconic pieces like the Bartok piece, and it's interesting to see how those things. Do you guys ever do performances where you add another pianist so that you can do the Bartok, or it hasn't happened
No,
yet, or the Barrios?
no, no.
Barrio
I
has
think
a
we kind of, yeah.
yeah.
I think we kind of set the tone for ourselves once we told ourselves we were going to commission pieces. I think now going forward, we kind of made it a thing where we want to really just exclusively
Yeah.
like present, perform just music that we've commissioned.
Yeah,
So
and of course there are plenty of other groups that are doing that rep. So and you guys want to try to play the stuff that's been written for you as much as you can. Like any group, to really sort of put your stamp on it. So
it's
it's great.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
we want to be doing like our own thing and like really putting new different things out into the world. So yeah.
very good. Congratulations, Felix, and stay well. We'll see you soon. Take
All
care,
right.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you.